Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for joining our bi-weekly webinar series. Every once in a while, it's I guess every 3 weeks, right, Chuck? Today, we're really pleased to present to you some presentation that seems to be top of mind for everyone these days around FinOps. The key to FinOps success, establishing a collaborative process for continuous cost optimization. And I'm pleased to be joined by a new victim in our series, Chuck Tatham, our Chief Marketing Officer and VP of Business Development. Hey, Chuck, how's it going?
Good morning, Andy. I see you're in the office today.
Yes, I am. I'm here. It's packed in here, actually. Just me and myself on the main floor here. So yeah, nice to be back in the office with some reliable internet. Always
Right.
the joys of COVID and working from home, right? So yeah,
So
we're looking forward to a good session here today, and I guess it's pretty much the Chuck Tatham show here, and with a little bit of color by me. So I'm going to turn it over to you to get going.
thanks, Andy. And just to be clear for everyone, we will spend about 30 minutes on this topic, including Q&A. So this is a reasonably quick bite. We'll move pretty quickly, and if you stay to the end, as was in the trailers there at the start, we are doing a draw for a $100 Visa gift card. So incentive to stay and listen to our content today. So we use the term FinOps. The topic is cloud cost optimization and enabling what we call continuous cloud cost optimization. The whole FinOps thing is a big, diverse topic, and we're not going to purport to talk about it in its entirety. There are lots of great sources. The FinOps Foundation is out there. There's lots of good material you can read and digest. I will also not insult your intelligence by suggesting that a vendor in the space won't be talking some about product. We will talk a little bit about product, but it will be in the context of how we help and fit into the FinOps game and help our enterprise customers up their FinOps game to try to align that vendor speak with the topic that everyone is interested in here. And really that's doing better things for your organization with respect to your investment in cloud. So our agenda over the next 25 minutes will cover the things we see in the market as far as major drivers to cost excess. So what is creating cost excess in cloud? We'll talk a little bit about some statistical data from our customers, which we think is particularly interesting. We'll talk about what gets in the way of the best intentions. In some cases, there are no intentions to fix these problems, but that's another topic. What does good look like? So in our experience, where the metrics would show that a customer or customers are doing well, what are they doing that we can learn from? We'll talk about the systems and process side of tackling the problem. That's where we'll knit in a little bit about Densify, and we'll use Densify as examples, some of our capabilities. And then we will do Q&A and that prize drawing, all within a half an hour, provided I advance the slides here. So what do we see as driving excess cost in cloud? And some of this will be very basic for some of you. Some of it might be eye-opening, but you know, the very nature of cloud, the agility and availability, the decentralization of the decision making, not being controlled by IT, standing up physical hardware, that's a factor. Probably the biggest single thing that we see as contributing to cost excess is that we really have to rely on that decentralized or distributed team, who are all very smart individuals, to estimate and make educated guesses as to the resource requirements for their things. The fundamental issue, though, is that cost is not a primary responsibility for those people. And just like at the buffet, it's human to err on the side of extra. It's extra human in this case when you're responsible for that thing running well. And then the third thing that we would note is that the emergence of infrastructure as code, things like Terraform, CloudFormation, orchestration and automation like Ansible, et cetera, is hard coding or embedding and perpetuating a lot of the desires of the people that are doing that guessing. So that means that the infrastructure as it's created by code includes those desires or estimates. We call it purchasing as code for fun. It's not so fun if you're in finance. And at scale, this is a big problem. If you have 10 workloads, it's a problem, but it's not a huge problem. The problem that large enterprises have is that the individual making these estimates might say, well, it's pennies on the hour, and I like a large, they work well. On the over the long term and at scale, that can be problematic. So if we look at the general trends, it would suggest, based on dollars, that just about every enterprise, at least any enterprise we talk to, is going this way at an accelerated pace. And we thought it was interesting to look at our customer base from a metrics perspective, and around one of our last user conferences with respect to resource efficiency. Now, this is an AWS look, so it's not Azure or GCP in this case, but we expect it would be very similar. Around a measure we call resource efficiency. Resource efficiency is simply a measure of how much money are you leaving on the table with respect to what your demand actually requires. So if you apply analytics, the wasted dollars in the case of a low cost efficiency example, and these are customers in all various phases of their journeys. So an early customer with us might be leaving almost 50% on the table with respect to waste. If you jump to things like the most favorite vehicle historically, reservations or reserved instances, we see a great diversity in the effectiveness of matching the reservation to the instance type. So how good is that matching? You can see in the case of the low cost efficiency, it can be pretty bad. It means that matching isn't being done or it's not being maintained. If you look at the coverage of RIs and savings plans, again, huge diversity, the effectiveness of the purchasing strategies. Now, inside of all of this are impediments to actually solving the problem. And we would observe that one of the big ones is the fundamental that application owners and ops people are only passively interested in cost, depending on the pressures that are put on them. They're primarily interested in performance. Finance and procurement, obviously the opposite. They acknowledge that things need to perform, the business needs to perform, but cost is really their primary concern. And so the control over the issue, the consumption, and the concerns live in different places. It's an at-odds problem. Secondarily, app owners, the people that own the infrastructure and have to approve change, are really quite happy with the status quo. And in most cases, it's the safest and easiest to just leave things the way they are. And if you do identify a bunch of changes, and I guarantee you in every organization, there are a ton of changes that can be made to drive cost efficiency, it is impossible for finance and procurement to do on their own. It cannot be done unless it's collaborative. So if we look at what sets the best apart in FinOps practices, and we look at a bunch of the elements that we see as absolutely critical, there are some very distinct things we see. Stakeholder motivation. Is it an issue taken seriously at senior levels, or is it not a top priority? I would closely tie that to, is in the organization there a way to tie performance of or cost efficiency KPIs to individuals that are responsible to participate in fixing the problem? If you don't have these two things in place, it's a really difficult thing to do. Transparency and communication. Is progress and the detail around what needs to be changed shared widely? Trust and collaboration. If the line of business and app owners won't allow change because they distrust or they're afraid of allowing change, or they're not motivated to, you won't get very far. Provisions for action. Is there a known process for approval and taking action? Or is it something that's ad hoc and best efforts? We find over and over again that in the absence of something procedural right through to actioning, those actions just pile up. And then automation. Is there a process for action built into the fabric of the infrastructure management process, or is it manual? So against all of these metrics, we're going to talk about how what Densify does actually relates to these problems. Now, the top two, we can't help you with. These are organizational. If someone senior doesn't care enough to put pressure on the organization, you probably have to wait until that pressure comes, because it's really hard to do otherwise. These ones are directly impacted by systems, process, and to a certain degree, culture. And we'll talk through some of these now. So if you think of the challenge as this pyramid, you've got the importance, and it's critical for intelligent procurement. Nobody's saying that you don't need to worry about your discounting, but the vast majority of waste is really found at the instance level, cloud and container instance level. And what we've observed is that over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of focus on the finance side of the equation, understanding the bill, making sure that you're buying correctly. And it's not surprising, because finance doesn't control infrastructure. Sometimes you start running around with basic saving suggestions and largely falling on deaf ears, because in order to get at the instance level optimization, you need precise and balanced optimization actions. And we'll talk about what it means to be balanced, because if you just run around with you're wasteful, you're wasteful, you're wasteful, you will generally get talked to the hand. Action automation, because at scale you have to be able to automate, and you got to consider containers, because it's a coming tide very, very quickly, and it's even more complex. So we would refer to this as next gen. And the notion of basic saving suggestions is really a lost thing, because in order to get change at the consumption level, you need a level of precision. So when we talk about what it takes to do this, precision is first. If you don't have precision, you will never get trust. It has to be collaborative, because if it isn't including the ops side and the finance side in one team together, you will never be able to team and collaborate on it. And then the third is integrated. It's got to be connected to the other systems and processes that you use to manage. So the Densify proposition, our engine, is renowned for its ability to ingest all of the terms in the equation, all of the detail. It's this detail that allows us to put out precise, actionable directives at the instance level, the placement level, if you're migrating, the finance side, and getting that continuous output to the people or the reporting that's required, the ticketing systems that will track the change management, and increasingly collaboration environments where people work, like Slack and Teams. The point is to bring a precise, trustable answer to get the approval to act, because if you don't get the approval to act, you will not get to pass it through to actioning. So really, really key. So what we mean here is that we don't just bring a constant you're wasteful message to the org. We bring a message that says, first and foremost, are you performing well? Are there opportunities to modernize? Should you change families so that you perform better? It might cost more, but the point is to bring the people that have to approve a balanced set of recommendations, so that when you come to them with a savings recommendation, they're more likely to approve, because they know it's safe, they know the answer is rigorously derived. It's not some finance person saying, well, it's suggested you're being wasteful. It's not good enough. And that cascades into everything you're managing. First and foremost, performance, stability, reliability, app owners, thumbs up, then move on to savings. So Andy, just talk quickly about this screen and the level of rigor we go into here.
Yeah, I think it's key for every single recommendation. In this case, looking at, this is an upsize recommendation as we move this thing from an R5 or an R4 to whatever that view is. I can't even see it. my eyes aren't that good. In any event, it's a specific recommendation to change families to address risk. And we look through the workload profile, build the history, and have a 24-hour predicted window of exactly what this instance is predicted to do on its current catalog size. And then in the future, what's that going to look like when we make that recommendation change? When you actually automate that and saying, you know, we need to be able to predict what that behavior is going to look like. That answer has to be fully informed by the differences. So we call it the effort level, but essentially, what are the differences in things around IOPS, a network, you know, or nitro hypervisors? We're moving to a different chipset, different family. What is that going to do? Is it automatable? So it's really important that the answer has to be informed for that so they can act on it and automate it. And further along as well, that answer also has to be fully informed with the reserved instance. So notice if you build that out one more time, the idea being that we have to understand, are you currently covered for an RI? Because if you are, better not change that because now you're moving away from your coverage.
So inside every one of these recommendations is extreme amount of detail. If you jump to a container example, you will see the same kind of rigor and detail around resource requests, limits, how to properly overcommit your container infrastructure to get the most out of it, and the very specific settings that will allow you to safely run those workloads. So it's this detail that we focus on first and foremost. We don't start with the bill, we start with the detail, because the detail is what allows you to build trust and bridge these silos of interest. So finance worried about right costs, line of business engineering, of course, and app owners worried about performance. If we focus on reliability and performance, and over time, everyone knows that's what this engine is doing, they trust, they have the visibility, they approve changes, the changes get executed, the quantity is correct, and purchases are optimized. Without this trust, it all stops on the right side of the screen here with finance. We hear over and over again, I have hundreds of recommendations that came from my bill intelligence and I can't action them. And
because they don't trust them.
The problem.
Yep.
So how do you communicate? You're not going to send that detail that Andy was reading through to an app owner. One of the things that we've discovered is key is this information in layman terms. Our app owner reports are generated automatically for every recommendation, and it shows again, just like Andy talked about, here in the blue is your app, Mr. App, Mrs. App Owner. You're actually constraining your app. On the right is what we're suggesting based on the machine learned model you should be in. And in fact, it costs a little bit more, but maybe as the app owner, you'd be interested in allowing us to make this change so that it will perform. Now, when the next quarter comes around and they get one that looks like this, that says, here is your machine learned use and the resources you're using compared to what you have reserved. Here's the predicted model of what we're suggesting you should be. It costs half. Will you please, as a reasonable human, approve this recommendation? And this might have been delivered down to them via Slack, for instance, and they can do that without even leaving their collaboration environment. Now, that's not to say that finance doesn't have their own requirements. We absolutely must allow for the same kind of attention and rigor to RIs, reserved capacity, savings plans. We're using a lot of AWS terminology here, but for other cloud providers, there are other similar vehicles. The automation of the financial purchasing vehicle optimization is absolutely key as well. Now, the integration piece is our observation that everyone has investments in the enterprise in all of these areas. You don't want another solution that is competing with those capabilities. If reporting is done through a BI framework, like in most of our customers, a chosen BI framework, then that should go to those frameworks. And we have all sorts of opportunities to publish these recommendations into a central repository that can then be fed off, processed, and other systems that require that information in order to apply it back to the infrastructure. A great example is that infrastructure as code problem we mentioned. Here's a Terraform snippet where someone's saying, give me a large, I like larges, give me 10. It works, I'm only gonna use them for a while. Problem with that is that it needs to be variabilized, and we give you the ability through these integrations to say, give the developer their default, allow the provisioning of the infrastructure, and once Densify has watched it long enough, replace that with an approval process so that it's policy compliant and owner approved. And it's absolutely key that those ingredients be part of it. So if you think about it in an overall process, we're watching over that infrastructure, we're publishing the human readable and the machine readable so that the app owner can approve, the change control can happen, and it can be applied back to the infrastructure, even including collaboration environments, as we said, like Slack, that allow you to do that. Now, conversely, if you had a report that suggested basically that something was wasteful and you cajoled an app owner or an admin to go up to an AWS console and change something from a large to a medium, the next time their CloudFormation scripts run, it's just going to be put back to whatever was in the code. So as you evolve these tool chains and stacks, you have to contemplate putting, embedding the answers right into the fabric of the way you manage. So if we come back to these key elements that we talked about, how did we do in this 25 minutes? As we said, you're really on your own as far as the organizational interest in fixing this problem. We found lately the current climate and the stressors that a lot of companies are under has kind of changed the attention to this, but not in every case. Some businesses just say, I've got bigger fish to fry. We're finding them in the minority. But if we look at these areas, I think what we've walked through is the practical side of the transparency in the communication, gaining trust, providing a provision for action, and eventual automation. Our customers are like you. They are scaled. They're the recognizable brands in the world. They're complex, they're hybrid, they're doing containers. If you do business with Densify, you're in good company. We like to remind that all of this starts with the basics of visibility. What is the potential for optimization? And from there, you go on a not too long path toward the ability to automate and close loop this and make it continuous cost optimization, to go from manual to integrated and continuous. Our trials are a great way to start on this visibility path. It's very quick. It does not require much effort from the staff on your side. And as we said in our rolling slides at the beginning, it is guided, so you're not on your own. We include a human in the process to help you along. That human we call a Densify advisor. They are included in the subscription if you become a subscriber. And not only do they make the trial easy, they stay with you if you choose to become a Densify customer. And they're just on call to make sure that you're successful and getting impact from the Densify technology. And with that, with 3 minutes, we'll go to Q&A. Hopefully you found this interesting. We will be sending out the recording to the attendees and subscribers. I will point out that there's a new e-guide that we're putting out in the next week. We will also send a notification on the availability of this. It talks about those elements, not so much of Densify product, but the elements of success for FinOps and cloud cost optimization. So we'll share that as well. Andy, any questions?
There are questions. I'm blasting away, answering them away. There's been a few of them in the Q&A chart, so I'm just dealing with those ones as we speak right now. I'll get you to answer this one while I finish off the last question, Chuck. It's around past services that we support. But here's a question for you. How do you get your organization to actually agree to automate optimization? And funny enough, some of these questions are related to that, but that's a more generic question that just popped in.
It's perhaps the most sticky part of all of this, because that status quo is so comfy. What our advanced customers start with is saying, let's just allow for one unit of the business, one business unit, one stakeholder that wants to go and tackle this problem. Let's just allow one or two of these changes to happen. They can be applied manually, and we will watch those workloads for a time. And everyone will see that the lights are still on. Maybe things are performing better even. And then, you go to the next chunk. And what we found is that over time, as they see things are operating as well or better, that the resistance goes down. It's not an overnight thing for most organizations. Maybe it'll start in dev test or non-critical. And some organizations, some of our longest term customers, they will always do manual changes, let's say on external production critical things, somewhat related to the organization, but just start with one change. Allow one change is the best way to go.
Here's a really good question, and you kind of addressed it earlier on the slide where we talked about first gen versus next gen, but it asks, can you compare your tools for FinOps to some of your competitors? And I think that one slide really spoke well in terms of, the focus of your standard FinOps bill reader versus what we would call next gen optimization.
Yeah. So the fundamental difference starts at ground zero, and that is our obsession with the behavior of the workload, the machine learning, the understanding, the focus on the workload, so that you get that trust, the safety, and the ability to apply the change. We are building very, very quickly more and more capabilities for the finance organization, because in most cases, we're finding these initiatives are being led by finance. So if we don't address that side of the equation, then we're leaving things out. The great thing about becoming a customer of Densify today is that our SaaS delivery model allows us to rev very, very quickly. So we're rolling out new things, I won't say on a weekly basis, but certainly on a monthly basis. And a lot of that is going toward what we're hearing from our customers in the finance roles.
Awesome. One last question. I see we're at the top of the hour, so I think this is the last one. We'll deal with any additional questions. Just send them in through answers@densify.com, and we'll be happy to respond, and we'll send out a recording as well after the fact with this presentation. Last question, I will announce our winner. But Chuck, do we support Azure and GCP? I can answer it, but it's a test for you.
Of course we do. We're deepest on AWS. Our Azure coverage is growing rapidly as part of that rapid release cycle. We have some very large Azure focused customers, so I think we do a pretty good job there. And our GCP capabilities, we have a number of GCP focused customers as well that value us for that precision, the ability to deal with containers, and are going with us on the journey of driving new features in for both of those providers.
Excellent. Okay, well, just to wrap up, the winner of our $100 Visa gift card is Edmund K. I won't give the rest of his information, but Edmund K is our winner today. Congratulations, Edmund. Our marketing team will reach out to you to figure out how to get that over to you, wherever you may be.
Congratulations. Say don't spend it all in one place, but it's $100, so you probably will spend.
Don't have it. Exactly. I know I would. Okay, well, thanks very much, Chuck. That's my favorite webinar so far because I didn't have to do very much. You did the whole darn thing, so appreciate that. And folks, look for our next webinar coming up soon. Just go to our events page on the website. And then next week, we will follow up with a recording, a copy of the presentation, and a link possibly to our financial management e-guide, which we're releasing next week too. So thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks to everyone for attending. Yes, and we will see you all for the next one. Take care. Have a great day.